Okay, hello and welcome to the presentation. The topic that I'm supposed to talk about is social linguistics and sociology of language. So, without further ado, let's dive into it. The first thing is you can either focus on two different aspects. We can really focus our efforts, or we can really focus our discussion around society, or we can really focus our discussion around language. But the thing is, when it comes to sociolinguists, they have to focus on both. And then there's sociology of language all over there also. You would have to consider both of those things. So, sociolinguistics, according to Hudson in 1980, it is the study of linguistics, or the linguistic study in relation to society. So, based on how society is evolving in relation to language, or by being influenced under the practice of language, that is the core subject or the core material that social linguistics entail. And then there's the other one, the sociology of language, where the society, they're the linguists or the experts would study the society changing or the society evolving in relation to language. So it's basically vice versa, one or the other. So sometimes society is like, if you ask me, my opinion on this matter would be sometimes society would be changing the way language is being used, and sometimes language would be forcing society to adopt a different practice, a different norm, or something different, perhaps. So after that, the relationship between there's the typical relationship between society and language, according to the norms, or according to the standards that we need to study. There are lots of different factors at play, and we're gonna elaborate on all of these factors a little later as well. But some of the factors which are actually the most prominent would be the age grading phenomena. Like, different groups would be communicating differently within themselves. For example, if someone like me in the in the early 30s, or in the late 20s, I would say I'd call myself someone who actually belongs to the late 20s. So someone who is in their late 20s, they won't be communicating with an adolescent in the same way, in the way where the adolescents actually communicate with each other. So the thing is, when we were adolescents or we were teenagers, we would have our own we would have our own way of speaking to each other, which would be really informal. And right now, let's look at it from a different perspective. Like, a guy in his late 30s would be communicating in a way more different way with a person who is in their late 60s. So that is how age groups actually dictate the way we use language. We would be watching our vernaculars around elder people, and also sometimes we need to watch our slangs or informal use of words in front of toddlers as well, because toddlers, they pick up words really fast. They're like sponges. They absorb whatever they hear, whatever they see, and whatever they can find. So yeah, kind of like that. So, and also the studies. I need to rephrase that. It's it's most probably would be the most probable suitable term regarding this thing would be education. How well someone is educated, what kind of educational background someone comes from, you can really gauge that. You can really get an idea of that through their languages. For example, in our society, or in the Bangladeshi communities these days, people who can talk in English fluently, we would perceive them, or we would presume that that person belongs to a wealthy family, maybe an aristocrat or something like that. That's the usual norm, because that actually binds with the prolonged history of the South Indian or the Indian subcontinent, so to speak, because India or the Indian subcontinent, it has been governed, it has been ruled, it has been captured and conquered by so many different races and countries. We have well, like we have like the final or the last time someone ruled us, that was the British people, the English people. So that is why we were kind of slow to adjust to the different norms and the different type of cultures that were actually forced upon us, because Bangladeshi people and the people of the Indian subcontinent, they were really resistant. And just before the dividation of the great countries into India and Pakistan and Bangladesh, just before that, some people started indulging themselves into learning English, because they knew, like, you have to cut iron with iron, or diamond cuts diamond, kind of like that, kind of like that type of philosophy. So, like, we were really late to indulge in these kinds of language practices, or in adopting a different language or a foreign language, perhaps. So we are still slow in that process. So in this scenario, if we see someone speaking English fluently, or someone who has a better grasp at that knowledge, or that at that language, we automatically presume that that person is actually better than us, or maybe more talented than us. So that is how the cultural phenomenon that is the cultural phenomena that we have in our societies. Still, it's still prevalent in our society. And then there are other studies, like the culture, or the trends and the norms, and also which entails other kinds of knowledge as well. Like, it's not only linguistic capabilities or linguistic skills. These actually entail all sorts of different kind of knowledge. Like, maybe someone's really adept in technology and stuff like that, they would be using a lot more techie lingos, and a lot more techie terminologies or jargons. So definitely that has an impact on the way we use language. And linguistic structure and behavior, they can influence or determine social structure as well, or they actually can give us a hint of the social strata someone comes from. For example, the poor, or the downtrodden, or the people who are in need of help almost constantly in the northern region of Bangladesh, they would be kind of slow in adapting to new language. But the thing is, the people in the southern regions of Bangladesh, especially Khulna, Chittagong, or Borishal, or even Potokali, those in those regions, people are they have a faster way of grasping a different type of language. So they have their own mechanism, and they have their own process of evolution, where they actually absorb or immerse themselves into a learning situation, or into a learning phenomena, where they can actually try to imitate other languages, or the type of accents of different regions and stuff like that. And apart from that fact, the influence it is believed that the influence is bidirectional. Um, like, further explaining, the way language can influence societies, the same way, and or the society can also influence the change or the evolution of language in the same way. So it goes both ways, so to speak. It's a double-edged sword. It can cut both ways. And there's also a popular belief that there's no relationship between them at all, which is highly refuted, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And so, apart from that, there are the relationships between people, and the relationships between different strata of the society as well. That also comes into play. That has a huge role to play in this context. For example, a husband and a wife, they would talk in a particular way, where they won't be talking in the same way in front of other people, even though they're husband and wife. The marital status, the social status, or the acknowledgement, that doesn't change the fact that they should be using, or the pair should be using different languages wherever they're put into a different atmosphere or a different environment. But It does. So it is what it is. And the social setting, like where you are, where you are based, where you're located, where you're situated, that also has a huge role to play in the type of language that you choose to use. So we call that decorum and stuff like that. But it is pretty simple when you call it like when you say it different situations or different atmospheres. For example, at home we'd be talking in a different manner, and in the workplace we would be talking in a different manner, and in school there's a difference in opinion. When the teacher's present, we'd be talking in a more sober way. And when the teacher's not around, we would resort to our friendly skirmishes or our friendly friendly informal way of speaking with each other within the classmates, that is. And the aim and the purpose of the interaction, that also comes into play over here, because if someone's seeking help from someone else, they would be really formal, they would be really polite, and they would be really soft in their approach. And if someone's being annoyed at something like that, or at someone else, or someone who would possibly, most possibly, deny you of something, they would be having a more harsh tone. They would not be as empathetic in their dispositions. So, and also the kind of topic that people talk about, that has its contribution towards the choice of vocabulary or the vernaculars as well. Sometimes there would be sensitive topics that we talk about. We'll be using a different set of vocabulary, and sometimes there are insensitive topics, or sometimes there are public topics where we would be using whatever comes to our minds. So, and the social scales and the concerned participants in the relationship, that also is contributory to this fact, to this thing, because status scale, and like I mentioned before, the social strata, the social diversification, and the social classes, because language divides people. There used to be a time when Sanskrit, the language Sanskrit, was only reserved for the elites of the South Indian, sorry, not only South Indian, it's the Indian subcontinent, and the normal people would be forbidden. They were actually forbidden to speak Sanskrit. So that is how they actually broke down that language and used a kind of modified version of that language. And they also mixed, or they also infused lots of different words from other cultures and other countries and other regions as well. And that is what actually gave birth to Bengali. Some people do agree to that as well. So the social strata, the social diversification, these things, they are definitely contributory to how language has been used so far, and how language would be perceived in the years to come. So that's there. And there is also, we touched about that a little bit, a little while ago, but to further elaborate on this, the formality factor, or how formal you are with someone, that would definitely dictate your choice of words, or your choice of sentences as well, or the choice of your tone as well. Pronunciation, enunciation, tone, flow, approach, all of these things, they are actually dictated by how formal you are with that person. For example, with our parents, when they are not in a good mood, or when we are actually trying to strike a bargain, or trying to coerce them into buying something for us. In that case, we would be highly formal, we'd be highly polite, we would be using all sort of different soft words, we would be using a totally different set of vocabulary whenever we are the ones who are making demands. And then when the parents are not in a good mood, the tone would be changing, or whenever we're talking to our bosses, or our teachers, our mentors, our instructors, definitely the tone would be much more formal. And the kind of vocabulary, or the set of vocabulary that we would be using with our parents, we won't be allowed to use those in front of our teachers and our bosses and stuff like that. So definitely the level of formality between, and the level of formality in relation within relationships, that has a way of dictating the way you speak or the way you choose your language. So definitely, the social linguistics that has to really focus its discussion, or that has to really focus the researchers on these aspects of the evolution of language. And definitely, since society is very closely and very intricately infused into this context scenario, it cannot be overruled. And definitely the cultural standards, and our moral code. Everyone has a moral code. Every country, every society, every community has its own moral code. Like there are some things that we, and yeah, also the religious factor comes in here as well, because there are some things we deem as right, and there are some things that we deem as wrong. And every people has their like, as far as I presume, every people will have their own moral codes as well. So definitely, there are some things we would be speaking in a different manner if we deem it wrong, and there are some things that we'd be speaking in a particular manner if we deem it to be right. So definitely, that is an important factor here. And the organizational units and transactions among units, like the regulatory factors, the government or the regulatory bodies of every country, they would be allowing some words, and they would not be allowing some different set of words as well. Definitely, there are you would be finding some countries where some words and some vocabulary, some gestures, some behaviors are actually strictly forbidden by the rule of the government. So those also would be playing their parts in securing in the evolution of language. And there are resources and actions, those are adopted for legitimizing our efforts as well. For example, if you want to get into a different country where most of the people speak English, or English is the national is the national language, or English is the language that's most spoken. Definitely, you'll have to learn English prior to getting an entry to that country. And if you want to see yourself as a citizen of that country, you would definitely have to have a good grasp of that language. And you'll have to maybe sit for a test, for example, the IELTS or TOEFL. You'll have to get your certification where it proves that you are skilled enough, or you are capable enough to face any kind of situation where communication is key. So yeah, the U.S. citizenship, that is a prime example for that, because definitely you'll have to have some sort of language capabilities in order to become a citizen in the United States. And definitely there are other medias, for example, money, power, language, commitments, love, truth. These are the symbols, or these are the mediums that actually dictate our way of speaking, and our manners of speaking, and our tone of speaking as well. So definitely, as it suggests, like I would like to give one of my personal examples, because this actually highly evolved my language capabilities, and how it changed my way of speaking and my understanding of language drastically. When I was supposed to go to Australia, I had to take my IELTS test, and that was my only IELTS test, and most probably the only one I'll ever take if something does not come up all of a sudden. Uh, and at the IELTS test, or the IELTS speaking test, I had to speak English for the first time. And yeah, I made a total mess out of that. I could have done better, but with about two weeks of preparation, that could actually only get me so far. And I also didn't have any speaking partner as well. That is a given. And after that, I had to apply for the visa. I got the immigration. I went to Australia. And when I went to Australia, the first job I got was at a call center. So at the call center of one of the most renowned IT companies of Australia, South Australia, that is. So like I had to talk for a living basically. So it's you either talk on the phone, you convince people into buying technological solutions or gadgets and whatnot, or you don't eat. it's as simple. It was as pragmatic as that for me. It was as simple as that. So even though I didn't have much practice, the only practice that I had was the IELTS test, which is not much to say. And so I had to force myself into speaking that language, and I had to force myself into change my manner of speaking. And also, in the beginnings, people pointed out from the people from the HR, from the human resources, they pointed out that my accent might have been a problem. So I had to ditch the Bengali accent or the South Asian accent, so to speak. I had to ditch that accent and I had to adopt something different. I tried the Australian accent, but that didn't suit me because most of the content that I've been consuming, most of the virtual content or most of the audiovisual content that I've been consuming were from the United States. So I usually watch American movies, usually listen to American English songs, which are originated from America. So the Australian accent was kind of difficult for me to get into or to master. So I had to choose an American accent, which was actually much easier for me to imitate. So yeah, it's actually the strategy that I used, that was kind of the audiolingual method and kind of the imitation method. Imitation method is something else that we would probably elaborate into some at some other point. But right now, the main focus is that I had to adopt a different accent in order to be fed. So it was as simple as that. And that actually worked. That actually worked in my favor. And I've been using that kind of accent, the accent that you're actually listening to right now, the accent that you're hearing. This is the same accent that I've been using for so far, and this has been instrumental in my survival in Australia as well, and in Bangladesh as well right now, up until now. So definitely, from the real life case scenario, I have been I my life or my career or my journey so far has been a prime example of how societal pressure, career, social strata, social evaluation, all of these things, they actually mold the way you speak, the way you adopt a language, or the way you speak your own native language. All of those things, they actually come into play. So sociolinguistics will probably delve into how language is actually shaped by society, and where the sociology of language would be focusing on more, or it would be more centered around how um, the language, or the kind of language spoken within the region actually shapes the history or the path of evolution for a certain society or for a certain community. So all both of those things, like if you want to, if you don't want to cut corners, or if you want to cover all different aspects regarding all of these things, definitely both of these two aspects, these two key aspects, needs to be studied really well and researched upon. So that would be all from my side at this point. And now I would start my self evaluation. So the thing is, the way I see the presentation, I can there like nobody's perfect, not even me. So even though I have honed my craft really well, I have had a lot of practice. I've been battle tested as well, because I have been in really high stakes presentations as well, in really high stakes situations, and in front of really high stakes stakeholders as well. So definitely, I have been like my skills when it comes to presentation, they have been tested again and again, and proven to be really effective and successful. So, but still, there are some areas of improvement. My accent could have been a little bit better. It could sound a little bit more natural, or even if I'm trying to imitate the American accent, I could work a little bit on that one as well. Maybe it will improve with time, or I would need more practice. I'll decide later on. The enunciation has never been a problem for me, because this is the type of emotion that I exude whenever I'm speaking English. That's perfectly normal, perfectly natural, which is one of the common challenges that Bangladeshi people face whenever they're trying to imitate a different language, whenever they're trying to adopt a different language or so. And I could use a little bit more help with the content. Like I could have researched a little bit more. Could have found or could have gotten into some more interesting facts regarding social linguistics and sociology of languages. But with the time I had and the busy schedule that I have, this is all I could muster, or this is all I could gather around. So thank you. I thank you all for sitting through the presentation, and until I see you next time, peace.